Prisoner's dilemma. And look at that, my phone almost fell. Basically, how a prisoner's dilemma works is that, let's say you and someone else, you guys did something. And then there's an incentive for you guys both to tell the same story, do the same thing, behave the same way. But if one of you decides not to follow, then what ends up happening is that you get screwed. Or if you're the one that decides not to follow what you guys agreed on, then you screwed the other person. So because you all know that, rationally, you both decide to not to do what you agreed to do. That's a classic prisoner's dilemma. So when you don't do what you agreed to do, you end up all worse off, though not as bad off as if you got screwed and the other person didn't get screwed. So the best thing for you guys to do would be to just do what you guys should have done the whole time. But hence why game theory is so interesting. Anyways, what the heck am I talking about if you guys have never heard of the prisoner's dilemma? Look what I found when I was digging through my basement. So for those of you who don't know what this is, I'm going to try to tilt my camera down like this. This is SAT prep class that I took. I cannot believe I took SAT prep class. I mean, for those of you who are not in the US, the SAT is one of the college entrance tests you have to take. And it's the more popular one. Now, it's supposed to measure, basically, how ready for college you are, right? So, at the end of the day, in an ideal world, people should just take it. In fact, if you talk to our parents' generation that went to college in the US, they said, yeah, I just showed up that day and I took the SAT test. That was all. But if you could get ahead, then you basically can force yourself or prepare yourself to get a higher score than the rest of the people. So the issue is, if everyone thinks that way, then everyone's working harder, everyone's spending more money, you create a whole test prep industry, and then at the end of the day, it's still a distribution of people that go to whatever schools based on their extracurriculars, their teacher recommendations, their grades, their college entrance exams. So you don't end up doing anything positive for yourself or the community if everyone realizes that, hey, you can get ahead by doing test prep. So I remember sophomore year, on a Saturday, and then at least one night per week for a month or 2 months, I was taking test prep classes. Ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. Sophomore. I was a sophomore in high school, man. Should have been having fun. Should have been playing. Should have been learning social skills. Nope. Doing this. And it's a common thing in the Asian community because everyone around them is doing test prep, right? It ultimately makes it so, of course, we all know from those affirmative action cases, unfortunately, that the Asian community is a little bit discriminated against in higher education. But beyond that, the Asian community itself, especially the kids of the STEM immigrants, arbitrarily make it more difficult on themselves because they're spending more time and more money and boosting their test scores. And then if everyone does it, then everyone's working harder, but there's still a distribution of test scores. That's just how humans are. So if everyone just agreed, let their kids have a childhood, let their kids just play, there wouldn't be this much. I mean, I think about these classes and I just remember one time I almost lost it, man. I remember I told my parents, I'm like, what kind of life is this? What kind of life is this? Like, we had to, man, there's so many emotions. There's so many emotions right now. I can get myself back to that day, man. I still remember that day. I was so angry. Like, it's a Saturday. You know, it's a Saturday. Why are we taking test prep classes? It was just, man. Just look up what a prisoner's dilemma is. And this is a classic multi-person prisoner's dilemma, as they say. Multi-person prisoner's dilemma. Now, there's ways of getting out of prisoner's dilemma, right? One way is if you keep playing this game, I don't mean like a board game as in just a scenario where people have to make decisions and behave in a certain way. If you keep repeatedly doing it, you sometimes will find a pattern. Besides that, you can preemptively communicate. And if you preemptively communicate, you might be able to get people to at least consider certain other factors besides just their pure rationality. The issue with any of that is still, if that one overachiever or that one cheater, however you can want to interpret it, decides, I'm still going to take that test prep class anyways, even if everyone else decides to let their kids have a little bit more of a childhood, then that person's going to get into potentially a better college, right? And then, so it's that fear. But then, as we know now with colleges, the higher education bubble, even colleges in general were a little bit overrated, but whatever. Almost lost it, man. I almost lost it doing this talk, and I'm just going to end it here. I almost wanted to smash something, but God, man. I guess a lot of Gen Xers are the parents of Gen Z, and now I think a lot of Gen Y, aka millennials like me, are having kids. I think you just have to figure out, how do you compromise, right? You don't want to take what happened to you as a child and completely go the opposite way. Right? That's not right either. But you have to figure out how to compromise, man. Because obviously, millennials, I think, got the short end of the stick when it came to just letting us explore a little, letting us have a childhood. The joke is Gen X, so the generation before me, the kids that were, let's say, growing up in the 80s and the 70s, right? Those kids were the latchkey generation. So their parents, boomers, were just too free on them, or maybe their parents were the generation before the boomers. I don't remember. But then it's like people saw what the latchkey generation went through, so then there was a shift the opposite. Gen Y, the parents were helicopter parents, right? It's like always kind of on them about everything, to the point where the kids were feeling suffocated. And now look at what the millennials have done. Like the entire millennial generation is just still failing to cope with where this world is, because again, the too much helicopter parenting. They didn't have time to explore. So some of them after college decided to do the exploration that they never got to do in high school. And some of them just still haven't found it, still haven't put it together, still haven't figured it out. And at least I ended up making a more reasonable vlog. But man, I looked at all this test prep stuff and I just cringed, man. I almost lost it. I almost went back to my old ways on the channel. I was cursed. I almost started just really getting really pissed. But the frontal lobe is a little bit stronger when you get a little older. Anyways, guys, I'm going to continue ripping this up. I'll talk to you guys soon.